Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is a podcast about the writers of the Italian Renaissance for world history. In this podcast, we're going to explore three main ideas. The first is that of humanism, a core concept of the Italian Renaissance. And we're also going to look at two writers here in this podcast, one of them being Francesco Petrarch, and the second being Baldassare Castiglione. The third writer we're going to focus on in class, and that is Niccolo Machiavelli. Now, a couple of information, a little bit of information for you about how to use this podcast. First and foremost, pause it frequently so you can write down some notes and anything that you see. I will be elaborating on information you do see on this podcast that is written in a PowerPoint. So be sure to take some good notes as well as completing all the required activities that is associated with this. Second of all, rewind and revisit so that you are prepared for class. You're more than welcome to watch this over again and to stop things, rewind it if you miss something. And the next thing is to please provide feedback to me. No tool or video is perfect without its flaws, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of mistakes in this podcast. So if you see something that is of major concern, please speak up and share with me. And the last thing is that you make sure you give yourself time to work with this podcast. And if you need some extra help, by all means, ask your fellow classmates with any suggestions they may have, and see myself whenever you feel needed. So let us begin this podcast by looking at the idea of humanism. As I have mentioned, this is a central core concept of the Italian Renaissance and really is a driving force behind what Renaissance thinkers, intellectuals, and even artists are trying to do, particularly in Italy and then other parts of Europe. First and foremost, in terms of definition, humanism is really a kind of broad definition, depending on who you ask. But for your purposes and for what I think works, is understanding humanism as a system of thought centering on humans, their values, capacities, and worth. Basically, study what humans do. This is an idea that actually goes back to the ancient Greeks and Romans that you studied in the past, back in the Greco-Roman civilization. And what happened at the time of the Renaissance is that Renaissance thinkers and scholars started rediscovering the works of the Greeks and Romans and came across this idea of humanism once again. And so they started to develop a newfound interest in human experiences. They started studying subjects in more depth like literature and history and art and poetry, music, philosophy, grammar, rhetoric, which is the art of speaking. Renaissance thinkers kind of shifted away from the traditional medieval scholar, which really focused purely on religion. Uh, Renaissance humanists did not reject religion, however, they kind of broadened their horizons to look at other things, particularly more about the human experience. They're inspired by what the Greeks and Romans did, and with that, they decided to focus more on what individuals can do, what humans can do in their capacity, and tended to have a slogan where they believe that humans can do anything if they will it. And so the potential of what humans can do was really a big thing that Renaissance writers and scholars focused in on. And so our first writer, which we can look at, Francesco Petrarch, who lived from 1304 to 1374, really is kind of the guy who got this idea of humanism rolling for the Renaissance people. He himself was a scholar and a poet who basically found and shared the classical texts of contemporaries. He basically found shelves and shelves of scrolls and manuscripts dating back to the ancient Roman times that have not been read or looked at for centuries, dusted them off, read them, and since he was a scholar in Latin, it was very easy for him to read, and found this great information and share with his friends. It's kind of like if you go through your parents' music collection and discovered a band or an artist that they liked, maybe the Beatles, or if they're into Snoop Dogg or something back in the day, whatever it is. Either way, and you kind of found it and say, wow, this is amazing, even though it's really not of your era. And so Petrarch was that kind of guy that found all these classics and shared them with his buddies. And so he reintroduced the concept of humanism to a lot of his contemporaries, and it kind of grew from there. Now, Petrarch himself, through his work and through his studies, really took a keen interest in the role of a civic life. And what that means is basically, what is your role as a citizen? And so the main question that he asked in his work and his life study is basically how to be a citizen. how do you live an active life to serve your state that you live in? Italy, if you recall, is a majority of the states are republics at this time. Individual citizens play a big role in the form and function of their government, and so Petrarch believed that everybody had to play a role. This harkens back to the Greek citizens of the ancient democracies. The great Roman politician by the name of Cicero was a great inspiration to him. And so you kind of looked at what is the key of what a citizen can do. What is the purpose of the citizen in terms of serving the state? And to be a great citizen, the key to this question that he has and how to do it, how do you become a great citizen? The key for Petrarch is an education. Education, according to Petrarch, can dramatically alter and change a human being. It can change a person from somebody who is ignorant to one who is not ignorant, somebody who is incapable of serving others to one who can serve the state and reach their full potential. Now, what kind of education are we talking about here? It's an education in the humanities. Petrarch believed that humans should study literature and art and history and poetry and music. And first and foremost, you need to know the Greek and Roman stuff. Understand the liberal studies that they came up with. And if you understand that, you understand human nature a little better. And that's going to be a key thing, that you're going to be able to reach your own full potential. And in doing so, you become free. Petrarch believed wholeheartedly that if you were somebody that was uneducated, you were somebody who was ignorant, you were a person that was enslaved within your own mind. And so, by becoming educated, you get to free your mind and truly become free and truly become somebody that can do something. Why does this matter? Well, basically, Petrarch believed that people who are educated will become productive members of society. They're going to make society a better place. They will be virtuous. They will be wise. And for the most part, they'll do good things for the state. And so this is a key thing. What education does is just basically make people better than they are. And this is an important concept that Petrarch would like to share in his works. Now, Petrarch expands a lot of these ideas that he believed in and shared most of them in a lot of the letters. What you have to do now is to read one of the selections that I gave to you in class about the many letters Petrarch wrote to his friend Boccaccio, and that's a picture of Boccaccio you see there. He was another Italian Renaissance scholar. Read it closely, highlight it, underline it, the key ideas you find, answer the questions that fall on a handout. Please pause the video at this moment so that you can do this activity, and when you're done, continue on, and we're going to go over this handout in class tomorrow. Now, the second Renaissance writer we're going to focus on now is a guy by the name of Baldassare Castiglione. As you see, he lived sometime after Petrarch, definitely more than a century later. And the notion of what being a productive member of society kind of shifted a little bit in that time frame from being a great citizen to one that can actually serve not only just the state, but now to serve a king or so on. Baldassare Castiglione was a courtier, meaning he was a person in the court, somebody that helped a person in power. He was an advisor. He also served as a diplomat. At times, he also served as a soldier, and obviously, he was a writer. Now, Castiglione's most famous work is known as the Book of the Courtier. And a courtier is a person that serves in a court. And this is a book that Baldassare Castiglione is really expanding on the notions of what civic duty means. Instead of service to the state, he's really focusing on what can an individual do to serve a leader and to become a courtier. And for your advice to be mattered, the main question is what Baldassare Castiglione is really asking is how do you get noticed? How do you become an important person within an inner circle of power? How do you become somebody that people will listen to? How do you help somebody that has some good advice? In essence, he's basically giving a key or a guidebook of how can somebody become ambitious or what an ambitious person do to get noticed. I often liken it to how do you become more popular within the circle that you're in. And for Baldassare Castiglione, his main idea is focusing on becoming a Renaissance individual. That is a person that has developed and cultivated many, many talents. For instance, you have to be well educated in the humanities, like Petrarch. But you also need to be well-mannered. The second thing, which is being polite and humble and honest with other people. And the last thing, you have to be well-skilled. You have to be a poet. You have to be skilled in art, skilled in music, skilled in sports, skilled in the art of warfare, and so on. So, in essence, a Renaissance individual is somebody who is well educated, well mannered, and a well skilled individual. And why is this important? Well, Baldassare Castiglione is writing to an audience who, at this time, the Renaissance is in full bloom, and you have a up and coming group of people in society, basically middle class people who are trying to stand out. They don't have titles and nobility, so they don't come from a great pedigree, but how can they individually stand out from a crowd? And it's really about self made individuals who want to make an impression and stand out from the rest and stand out from a crowd. And for Baldassare Castiglione, it reflects the middle class individuals who are trying to make an impression in the world that they live in. It's Castellano's work can be very much likened to a college transcript. Whatever activities and clubs that you can put on there that you have participated in and have actively pursued can help you make you stand out from the rest in the eyes of a college administrator who's looking at your application to see if you should be accepted. So we'll conclude with a little bit of work about looking at the Book of the Courtier. And in addition to the handout that you did on Petrarch on the backside, as you know, you have a selection about from the Book of the Courtier itself to give you a little more depth about it. And so, and that being said, if you need to review this podcast, and we're going to review a little bit more about in class this information, as well as the 2 reading assignments, and get into Niccolo Machiavelli and the Prince. So for now, this is the end, but tomorrow in class, or the next time I see you in class, we're going to investigate this information a bit further. Thank you very much, and have a good day.